Toothless, Scene 4.
The park.
Part 3. I'm going to run through it. Wait! Albrecht cried out. Wait! Franklin had already stepped back and squatted down in a sprinter's starting pose. Albrecht's hands went up, waving in rejection of this action. But before the mortician could say more, Franklin launched himself forward in a full-on sprint. Marathoner was a defining trait for Dr. Franklin Meadowlark. This particular trait brought back memories of winning competitions in school and other events. With these memories came a torrent of anger and distrust, as he doubted any memories of racing were real. The anger fueled his dash and spurred him to run faster than the memories haunting his brain. Franklin, outrun. 4. Success. Very difficult DT. The doctor sped across the puddle, causing the water to part and splash in his wake. Albrecht was halfway through telling Franklin to not disturb the waters when a wave from the puddle splashed over him. The doctor was on the other side, skidding to a halt across the grass, panting on the outside and screaming within. Albrecht did his best to shake and wipe off the disgusting lake water from his bottom half.
So much for not disturbing the water. You look like one of them geckos skimming across the top of the water, Curly guffawed.
Franklin chuckled as he looked himself over. His designer pants and running shoes were wet. He forced that to be of little concern. Franklin was happy that he had the forethought to create his outrun skill from the start of the adventure. Thrilling memories of running races and beating competitors haunted the back of his brain. But the medical examiner pressed those artificial memories back by looking forward beyond the edge of the green light bubble. Guys, I see a light, Franklin informed the group as he walked a few paces beyond the bubble's safety. Albrecht approached with the toothbrush light, revealing 2 paths forward. The pale light looked just like the one from the bus stop, except this one was hanging from an awkward angle. The glitched light was coming from the broader passage on the right. I see it too. Bez stood next to the mortician.
I've seen this movie,
Curly smirked as the group advanced toward the pale light.
It's about bugs. You guys remember that part? No? Franklin, don't look at the light.
Curly imitated the sound of a bug zapper and the subsequent sound of a bug falling dead. He chuckled quietly as he followed the rest of the group toward the light. Franklin walked into the pale light and peered at the dark structure the street lamp was cropping out from. As the green light of the toothbrush approached, the shadows were pushed back, and the medical examiner's face twisted in confusion at what he saw.
Cars? These cars shouldn't be here. It defies logic. This whole system is breaking down. It's not making sense.
Franklin turned on Albrecht and grabbed him by the shirt, eye twitching. He leaned in close and whispered, It's breaking our minds, too. The mortician attempted to push the doctor back as the Magi's panicky voice came from behind. Oh, no. No, 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 no. Bizarri was backed against the far edge of the light. No, I'm not doing those gremlins again. The street lamp was precariously fixed high in the large stack of old, dusty, junked cars. They were the exact same cars encountered at the junkyard. The horrors of the junkyard quickly flooded the forefront of the doctor's brain, and his eyes grew wide with realization. Quickly and quietly, he walked backward out of the pale light. Oh, no. The doctor held his bandaged head as he moved farther away. Not this again. Bizarri reflexively shielded her head as well with one hand. I'm going the other way.
The dentist was where the cars were,
Albrecht declared with his slow retreat.
So I'm not going anywhere near those cars either. I barely recovered from the mental moxie hit I took the last time I encountered that guy.
Curly watched the entire group move back the way they had come. He quietly chuckled and followed as they moved away from the streetlight.
Smart little bugs don't get zapped, he mused.
The glitched light on the car stack disappeared behind the hedge wall as they traveled deeper down the other passage. This alternate path felt darker and more narrow than the one they had exited, forcing everyone to walk in a single file. Franklin was walking in front, near the edge of Albrecht's light. His voice was a quiet murmur of ramblings about the lack of sense in the system. Franklin looked up from his muttering and nearly fell over, trying to stop himself. He scrambled back, waving his arms and calling out to the group in a harsh whisper. "Wait! Wait!" Everyone froze and remained silent. Franklin pointed just beyond the edge of the green light. There, floating with a cold, deathly quiet, was a whisper of the park. The ghost faced away from the group, but they could still see its long black hair hanging over a bowed head. The apparition floated over the grass with its unnatural stillness. "It's deader than dead." Bizarria's voice was small as she recalled her mental note from the developers. It was a glitch that once caused the Magi to smirk, but now she did not smile. "Back to the cars," Albrecht whispered. "Back, back, back!" echoed Bez, quiet and shrill. Everyone quickly and quietly shuffled back the way they had come, struggling not to tumble over each other in their haste. The light from the car stack once again became visible as they rounded the hedge wall. "I'll take my chances with the cars." Albrecht tilted his head and cracked his neck as he approached the car stack. "No, wait! There's another way!" Franklin was just beyond the border of green light. "Yeah! Come on, guys, over here!" Curly moved back beside the doctor and motioned to a third path in the corner of the car stack's clearing. This third passage was just as dark and narrow as the path that ended with a spirit. "Going that way!" Bizarria hurried over toward Franklin and Curly. "Why didn't I see that before?" The mortician wondered as he followed the group. "The most terrible trap has probably been laid down this way." Curly spoke in a hushed tone as the group moved along the third path with a quickened pace. "Only because we chickened out and didn't go down the other two paths." "Yeah, well, look at our luck so far," responded Bizarria. "Starting with only 3 mocks and max." Curly worked to curl back into the tips of his mustache. "I am rather surprised at how well we've done. We all are a little squishy." "Yeah," Albrecht chimed in. "I mean, look at what we have to do just to cross a puddle of water." "Speaking of," Franklin interrupted as he motioned for everyone to stop again. Another puddle lay in the group's path. It was a perfect circle and small enough to walk around. "Going around the puddle," Bizarria said. "Same," Curly called out as he walked on a different side around the puddle. After carefully moving past the water, the path turned right and diverged into 2 parallel passages. The passages were separated by a narrow hedge wall. Everyone peered into the darkness on both passageways, attempting to surmise where to go next. "All right, we got 2 paths." Albrecht waved his toothbrush at the entry to each path. "Which one?" "I'll do what you guys do." The Magi nervously rocked on the balls of her feet as her eyes flitted over the borderline darkness. "I'll take the path less traveled," Franklin said with a grin. Albrecht chuckled, shaking his head, and began to walk down the path to his left. You know," Dr. Meadowlark continued, moving quietly forward, "there is a reason for that. Walking down the path less traveled, I mean. It means there's not as many things walking this way and fewer things to kill us." Albrecht nodded with Franklin's reasoning, and the doctor hummed a little song about taking the high road. His humming stopped when the group stopped. "Not another puddle?" Bez sounded defeated as she peered over Albrecht's shoulder. "Nope, nope, 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 nope." Curly turned around and started walking back the way they came. This time, he was sure he saw a snake slither across a ripple in the water. "Oh," Franklin leaned forward to get a better look. "Yeah, this is a big one." "The puddle is too big to go around." Albrecht stood next to the doctor at the puddle's edge. He waved his toothbrush over the opaque waters to get a better view, and noticed the hedge wall ended in the middle of the water, but the path continued. "Yeah, we'd have to go through." The mortician looked back at Curly, who was standing at the far edge of the toothbrush light. I don't know if I want to go back the other way, though. Curly grumbled and shook his head. Nothing has happened with the water yet. Albrecht's eyes were big, sad, and pleading as he looked at the security guard. The cowboy clenched his jaw and pushed down his bristled mustache. He paced in a small circle as he fought back the growing phobia. After a few circles, he puffed out his chest and stood next to the small old man with the lighted toothbrush. The security guard peered at the wall's end. It was dark and difficult to tell if anything truly lay beyond it. Curly closed his eyes and massaged his mustache, slowly exhaling his apprehension. Then his eyes opened with an idea.
Hey, somebody hold me while I lean over the edge and see how far this puddle goes. Also, hand me that toothbrush.
Albrecht complied and handed Curly the toothbrush. When the toothbrush left Albrecht's grasp, its light quickly dimmed and the bubble shrank.
Never mind.
Curly shoved the heirloom into the mortician's chest.
I'll give this back.
The light of the toothbrush once again brightened within Albrecht's grasp. Bizarre let out a whistle of relief as the light came back to its full strength.
All right, Gummy Bear. Change of plans. You lean out there. I'll hold on to you.
Albrecht nodded and moved to the edge of the puddle. Holding Curly's hand, Albrecht extended himself to see if the toothbrush's light could reach beyond the water's edge. Bez quickly came to Curly's side to help keep him from falling over. Curly, strength. 4, success. Normal DT.
Can you see the end of the puddle?
Curly leaned back in a half squat, holding tightly to Albrecht, who was nearly parallel over the water's surface.
I can see the end of the puddle,
Albrecht declared as he stretched over the water with his toothbrush extended. He squinted, attempting to see what was beyond the edge of the toothbrush light.
I think I can also see another street lamp.
Curly exhaled as he pulled Albrecht back to the grass.
How deep does the puddle look? It looks the same as the rest, answered Albrecht. I think I can nimbly walk across the puddle. Now, hold on now. Are you sure that the only one of us with a decent light should go first into the puddle?
Curly held out a hand and halted Albrecht's advance into the water. Without waiting for a response, Curly answered his own question.
Let's switch spots. You know, at least that way, we'll still have a light if I go down.
We could go take the other path, Franklin interjected. Yeah, but that might lead us back to the cars, Bizarria said.
I'd rather take the cars than the puddle.
The doctor's voice shifted to a growl as the haunted memory of winning a race pushed its way to the front of his mind. Bizarria held her head and softly shook, unable to accept any of their options.
Great! Now we're all scared of water,
Curly shouted. We're all scared! Bez held her head tighter, but she couldn't stop shaking. I'm heading back. Franklin stomped away the artificial memory. The medical examiner turned around and walked back the way they came, not waiting for the rest of the group to follow. However, he was grateful when the bubble of green light caught up and surrounded him. They followed without saying a word, and Franklin quietly noticed his smile did not twitch as his companions walked with him. The companions moved in a single-file line back through the passage. Upon returning to the small circular puddle where the parallel passageways met, Albrecht grabbed the medical examiner's shoulder, forcing him to stop.
Guys! Yep, I see it,
Curly whispered from the back. A whispering spirit at the edge of the toothbrush light, hovering on the other side of the small puddle. It floated, motionless, facing the group with a glistening curtain of long black hair covering its face.
This ghost is not supposed to be here.
Franklin felt the twitch return, causing a snarl to curl his lip. The doctor turned around. He moved with a quickened pace down the path that ran parallel to the first. Franklin saw no indication of this path being traveled more or less than the one they had just come from. Franklin wanted desperately to run, to scream at the dark, intrusive system. As memories of racing threatened to flood his brain, he covered his mouth to prevent the screams from escaping. Everyone rushed down the new path after Franklin, but was abruptly stopped as their passage ended with a large, bug-infested hedge wall and another motionless ghost hovering over the grass. A yelp of fear escaped Bez's mouth, followed by a single exclamation. "Run!"
Back, back, back!
Curly was already reversing his direction.
Turn! Turn!
Albrich's voice was spastic as they ran past the puddle and its ghostly sentinel. Bez and Franklin now took the lead. They struggled to keep their fear-filled squeals quiet as they ran down the first parallel passages. The surrounding threats steadily cut away the group's travel options, causing fear to erode their need for silence with every rapid step. They wildly scanned the darkness as they were once again standing at the edge of the large, ominous pool of water.
"Where's Curly?"
Albrich called out.
"We lost Curly."
"No, I'm here," Curly responded as he jogged into Albrich's light. The group bunched together where the grass stopped and the water began. To their front were the haunted waters that they had so desperately tried to avoid. To their rear were apparitions waiting to siphon their souls.
"I'll go first."
The cowboy straightened his hat and pushed down his mustache. He set his sights straight ahead, striding past his companions and stepping into the water. As Curly's foot crested the opaque surface, the cowboy reached back, expecting, hoping that someone would take his hand. Albrich grasped Curly's hand as the security guard steadily walked into the water. The cowboy exhaled with Albrich's assuring grip, only now realizing that he had been holding his breath. The water was still ankle-deep, but the shallowness did little to ease his anxiety. Albrich again held his toothbrush like a dog with a bone and reached back with his free hand while stepping into the water with Curly. The Magi grasped Albrich's open hand as she placed a foot in the shallow waters. With one foot in the water, Bizarria looked back at Franklin and extended her hand. Franklin looked to the Magi, then the water. He recalled one of his best races.
"No!"
Franklin yelled, grabbing his bandaged head tightly with both hands. Bizarria looked to the doctor with concern and worry, but continued to extend her hand. He loved the wind in his ears, the pumping of his heart, the freedom of the air. All these things added up to his exhilaration and love of the race. However, racing also created a moment where he could forget about the neglect of his parents and just be free.
"Stop it!"
Franklin shrieked to the sky.
"Get out of my head!"
Bizarria recoiled. Franklin saw fear in her eyes. The other two were staring at him as well. Dr. Meadowlark whined loudly and hit his head several times as he paced up the water's edge. It hurt, but just enough for him to open his eyes and see what was beyond the water. Franklin shook his head to clear his vision. The twitch had grown to a spasm that felt like half his face would fold into itself. Still, at the edge of the toothbrush light, he could see green grass on the other side of the puddle. "You want me to run? You want me to run?" Franklin cried out to the darkness. He stepped back, squatted down. Albrich moaned through his toothbrush in jilted rejection. Without waiting for the starter gun, Franklin Meadowlark sprinted at full speed across the water. Franklin, outrun. 3. Failure. Very difficult DT. The doctor bolted past the trio, water spraying in his wake. He crossed the water in seconds and slid to a halt before jumping and hollering at winning his micro-race. His final whoop faded, and his smile faltered as he looked up at the thing beside him. A stack of junkyard cars towered through the darkness, illuminated by a column of pale light from a glitched street lamp above. He noted the direction of this light was different from the last, though still awkward in its aim. As the doctor lowered his eyes from the top of the impossibly high pile of dusty old cars, a pair of dim headlights blinked from the shadows within.